Just on here to share some thoughts, and I think I'm a little nervous on the thoughts I would like to share because I know it can be a very difficult subject for some, if not most people. Um, I guess I wanted to talk about, like racism, and I guess in like how it looks and how it affects some people to where to the point even to a person who isn't racist, they may actually appear racist, and it's just because they're really hurt. I know that may sound odd, but um, I mean, if you're a white person, there's a lot of you out there that are hurt by people that are in particularly black because you feel that them claiming that you're racist because you're white is very racist. And I can't disagree with you on it, but this is sort of where I get to the part where how somebody who might just be hurt appears racist or may start to act racist when they're really not. They may start to become very discriminative, and it's because they're hurt. So their view of who's really being racist and who's not becomes really obscure, meaning that they themselves have somebody has been racist to them. Someone has hurt them. So and they did not get healing for that hurt. And so their view has become really obscure now, to the point that, yeah, every white person begins to look like they're racist to them because they didn't really seek healing. So now the color of your skin is honestly just a trigger for them, and it has nothing to do with you. It just has a lot to do with they have a lot of hurt inside. And equally, I have noticed it seems to be the other way around too. There's some white people that have been hurt by black people that are racist as well. And I don't think racist is just between blacks and whites. I think that racism doesn't have a race, and it can exist in any race then. Um, but it seems to be more prominently known between blacks and whites. Um, I don't think that that means that more blacks and whites are racist. I think that's just people seem to acknowledge it more there and pay attention to it more around there. But honestly, I think that there's plenty of racism in every race. So I'm not just saying it's between blacks and whites. It's really not. It's just that I'm using that as an example because that seems to be the one where people pay attention to it most, to be honest. But honestly, um, uh, you know, it seems like it doesn't really matter what race you are. It's been hated at some point. Um, Even in American history. Um, like there's been a racism against people who are Chinese and Japanese. Um, and well, of course, in history, everybody seems to have the common knowledge to know that there was much um, racism against people who were black. There was also racism against those who were Irish, Jewish, Mexican. Um, And yes, this was all in America. Um, yeah, and I would say even nowadays that there is racism against people who are white as well. Um, as what started racism, I'm not sure. The only thing I can guess is ignorance. Just plain ignorance and somebody's big freaking ego. As for what's going on today, I would consider it more a very small portion of it ignorance, and the larger population of it that seems racist, I think, has a lot to do with hurt. I don't think it has so much to do with real, genuine hatred towards a certain race. I think it has a lot to do with just plain hurt. I myself have been a witness to racism both against whites and blacks. Um, so I know what it looks like. And I think, either what color you are, if you just plain don't like racism, I think either even if it's your color they don't like, or even if it's your color, not your color they don't like, it's a very scary place to be, to exist around that. I will not mention the names of the towns or cities that I've seen that, I've lived around that were racist, uh, simply because I don't like pointing the finger in certain directions, uh, just to stir more hate. Um, I'd rather just leave it be, where maybe they can have a chance of peace to learn and grow. So I'm not going to mention the places I've lived. I can say one place was very racist against whites, and I did not like going outside. I would stay inside quite often. Um, 'Cause, I mean, you would get scowled at, and you'd hear people saying dirty, nasty things about you and giving you dirty looks simply because you're white. And there was no other reason. And they made it very clear it's just because you're white. And they would act like you're the racist one, even though they were discriminating against you because of your skin. And it was a very scary time in my life because, to be honest, before living in that area, I had never witnessed racism before. Never. I mean, my family was um, grouped up of different colors. My friends were grouped up of different colors, and nobody pointed out anybody's color because it just honestly didn't occur to us. It really hadn't. So it never occurred to me till I lived there. And I would still say I don't have that state of mind where it occurs to me too much. I can say that being in the environment, though, did very much so affect me that, now I do get scared. I get a little nervous. Like, does this person not like me because of my skin? If, but I'm not somebody who lets my fear overtake me. I mean, unless you get me on a roller coaster, I admit I don't like those. But, like, something true, like genuine fear, I'm usually somebody who likes facing that and likes to overcome it. Um, I have admitted I have Asperger's, I have ADHD, I have anxiety, and I've got a lot of family issues. So I'm somebody who very much so has to live a life of overcoming. Um, so when it comes to bad things, it's not really an option to me to not overcome something. Um, I've lived a life where I have to overcome, so that's just how I live my life. I know for others it may be much more difficult for them, and they may have gone through a hurt like this, and it may be much more difficult for them to face and overcome this. Um, that being all said, there was some people that when I lived there, did enjoy their company. I remember this one very heavy set woman who would sit outside in her fold out chair, and she would always smile and wave to me. And I always appreciated seeing her because she was at least a little small part of the world that I had grown up in and I missed very much since living in that area with somebody. It just didn't occur what color you were. All that mattered was you were a person and they were going to wave to you and smile. And I very much appreciated her. Um, as I said, the world I grew up in, uh, before I was living in that area, I had a godfather, my uncle, who is half Mexican and half Irish. And one of my favorite aunts was, yes, black. And to this day, I would still say she's my favorite aunt. She was very sweet. Um, Unlike my aunts who are blood, she associated more with us and talked with us and hung out with us. And she was the one person in the family that didn't mind that I wanted to wear black lipstick. So, I miss her terribly. We ended up losing touch with her. Uh, Man, if I could ever get in touch with her again, I would love to. She was an amazing aunt. And it wasn't that she spoiled us or anything, so that wasn't the case. It's just she, had fun with us and talked with us and was supportive and kind. And that was the reason I loved her so much. And I still love her to this day. I very much miss her. She was just a wonderful person. Um, and that was why it was all the more hard to live in an area where they didn't where they were racist against whites because uh, nobody knew my background and no one cared. All they saw was my skin and just assumed I must be an all white family and only supported whites, and that was it. Nobody knew my background and nobody cared. And yeah, so it really did not feel like a safe area. It was very uncomfortable living there. That being said, as I said, I also have lived in an area where they're racist against blacks. I still remember the first time I noticed, and it kind of terrified me. Um, the only reason I didn't say anything to my family was because they usually tell me that I'm being dramatic or, uh, just not very friendly, not very nice. But which was great when I finally realized my family was acknowledging it because then I was finally allowed to open up and mention that I had noticed. And, it made me very, very uncomfortable. Uh, we were going to a church, and I remember that was when I first noticed. There was not one black person in that church. It was, I mean, they were all white. And I just remember feeling very uncomfortable. Um, it struck me as odd. Like, why have I not seen one black person in this town? Why have I not literally seen one? I don't see any at church. I don't see any when we go grocery shopping. I mean, it's literally all white. It's actually a very scary feeling at that moment. I didn't like it. It made me very uncomfortable. Uh, you know, like how could a whole town be all um, white? Even when I, lived in the area that was racist against towards whites. I mean, I had seen another white person every now and then. I would see another very few times. I mean, it was like a rarity. Like, you might want to go play the lottery when you saw one. Uh, like, this is rare. Maybe I'll get that rare moment of winning the lottery. But in this town, there was literally just nobody black. I mean, there wasn't even one to feel like, wow, that's a rarity. I better go play the lottery. I mean, I didn't see one. Um, Come to find out though that there was a lot of people in the town that were not racist, but did also come to find that there really were a lot that were too. Um, and it was a very uncomfortable feeling. The day that I really got any somewhat of evidence, at least for myself, to know that what I was seeing was true, was when I was going to another church, and this is going to be very uncomfortable to say, but I actually did meet someone who was, when they were younger, had tried to join the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan. Um, and I remember when the guy told me about it, he told me that this place used to be very racist. Very racist. And in fact, he told me just a matter of years ago, like maybe 10 or so. This was at the time, though, not now. That you wouldn't find one black person, he said, here. They were just that racist. It could not happen. They could not live here. Uh, so it's a very scary moment to be experiencing that. You know, I not every. I mean, nobody expects you're going to meet somebody that tried to join the Ku Klux Klan. Um, and here I had somebody before me telling me all about it. He said he grew up with family members that were in the Ku Klux Klan. They were in the KKK, and he was going to join too. But when it came time, he was denied. Um, and he said he was told that his mother was Mexican, and that's why. And he said it was in that moment that he finally realized he had to change his way of thinking. Because if he's half Mexican and nothing about him had changed, meaning like good things about him had changed, and he's not some ugly, dirty, bad person, then clearly he had to realize that others that were being called ugly and dirty were not ugly and dirty. So he had to change his thinking. Um, and he told me that the town had lightened up, and now you can see somebody who's black every now and then. And he was right. After living in that area for a few years, I had noticed that there was, now it seemed like, more black people starting to show up, and I cannot tell you how much it was brightening my day just to see a little more, just not all white all the time, and feeling anxious, like I'm literally surrounded by racists, and I know it. And there's nothing I could do about it, just like there was nothing I could really do about it when I lived in the area before that didn't like whites. Now I lived in an area that didn't like blacks. Um, but, more and more it seemed, there was black people starting to move into town. And I can definitely say from that last time and to now, there's definitely more. I wouldn't say there's very many still, but there's definitely more to the point you can notice. Um, Maybe even a little more blacks than what there was, and the area I had lived in before, where they were racist against whites. Like, there was more blacks there now than there is whites there. Um, least to my knowledge, I haven't been in that other area in a long time, so I wouldn't know. Maybe people have, started being less racist, and maybe there's more whites there. I don't know. Um, but I do know currently in the area that I lived in with where they were being racist against blacks. Um, it has decreased quite a bit. So there's people now that are living here, and I can't even tell you how much it brightens my day because, no matter what form you see racism in, it makes me very, very uncomfortable. It very much so does. So it made me so happy to see less and less racism to where, the world that I had grown up in could be more existing again, where, you just, different colors didn't occur to you. I mean, you could physically see if someone was a different color. It didn't occur, though. It wasn't the first or last thing on your mind. It was just not thinking about it at all. The only thing you thought about was like, oh, I like this person. They wear glasses and they're a big nerdy dork, or I like this person. They're sweet and they're nice. I mean, you don't think like, oh, I like this person. They're a big dork and they're white. That never occurred. It never never crossed my mind. So that was more the environment I grew up in, and I admit I still miss those times, and I wish the rest of the world could function in that view, because um, as you can see, not functioning in that view gets a lot of people hurt. Which brings me to the part to explain why I say that those that act like they're racist are not always racist. They're just hurting, and it makes them act a little racist. Um, I guess, for example, there's everybody seems to notice the racism between whites and blacks. That seems to be a pretty big deal. Um, but I think it exists in more places. There's still some people that do not like Japanese. There's some people that do not like the Chinese. And there's some people that do not like the Irish or the Scottish or the Jews. And there's, you get it. There's still a lot of people that do not like other races. But for the example of how someone might appear racist when they're really not, or maybe they've just been really hurt, so they start acting and like, in a sense, becoming a racist themselves. Um, for example, you've noticed all these people that are, in particularly black, standing up and trying to um, express very much so that they've had racist experiences and people have been racist to them, discriminated against them. And, some of them, beings I've experienced what racism looks like, some of them I I don't know. I can't say that they have had a racist experience or not. I cannot because I don't personally know them, but some of them I can see it in their eyes. They've gone through something. They've gone through something. And somebody who is probably in particularly white had hurt them very badly. Whether it was they won't let them have a job when they need the job to feed their family and take care of them. Whether it be that, yes, some cop was being very discriminative and has arrested their family or arrested them when they were innocent. And I'm not bashing cops. I think there's very good cops out there. I actually knew two cops myself. Uh, one used to live across from me, and one used to live next door to me when I was about 14 years old, and another time when I was 15 years. No, wait. Actually, they were both when I was 15. Um, yeah, the one that, lived across from us, I would say was a very bad cop. And I was glad that by the time that we knew him, he had lost his job. He was no longer a cop. Um, and he was honest with us. He told us some things that he had done, and I will not get into that, but he was a dishonest cop. He was not a good cop. So, I've seen the side where there is cops that are bad. They're not honest, and they will do things on purpose. Um, and no, he didn't seem racist. Honestly, he was just probably an asshole to whoever he pulled over. It really didn't matter. But you get it. There's cops out there that are not good. Also, there was a cop that I had known as well, um, and he still had his job. He was a very good cop, though. He would talk with me and my siblings, and he was one of those cops that actually did care about his community. He was not one that was there to get power hungry or abuse his authority. He was a very good cop, and connected with his community. He didn't just sit there and like, oh, I'm a cop, I get to tell you what to do. He connected with his community. Um, so I understand there are good cops and there are bad cops. But that being said, there are bad cops. I'm sure that these people that are standing up and saying that they're tired of racism against them, the blacks, um, I can just see it in their eyes that they have had true, genuine experience. I can see it. And you can see the pain in their eyes. Um, that being said, of how somebody, may start acting like a racist when they're really not, they're just hurt. As I just said, they were discriminated against, and particularly by somebody or somebodies who were white. And, when you've been hurt in some way, whether it be by racism or discriminated because you're a woman, or discriminated against because you wear glasses, I mean, anything, it hurts you. If you've been hurt in some way in your life, you now have triggers that trigger you and cause you to have anxiety and cause you to have fear and cause you to have distrust. And I, more than anybody, would know what that's like, especially, growing up in, the environment I did with the abuse of my father. I did not trust men. That was a trigger to not trust them. I had to get past that though, and I did. And I can't say that I was triggered so much to the point though that I was, I hate all men or something like that. No, I was very much good friends with men most of the time. I just did not trust to let any of them have my heart. I was cool being friends, but anything further, and I would have anxiety attack. And even when I finally let my, when my boyfriend pursued me, and I, finally agreed to just take a chance, I can't even begin to describe to you the anxiety I went through. There was times, like one time he actually did get mad at me, and I immediately was just thinking, I'm stupid. I should never have trusted anybody. I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't. But again, I'm also somebody who conquers over my fears. I don't accept myself to not overcome things. So, I would have my cry, okay, big cry. It was not a little rant or a little cry. I would have a big one. And, um, and he was really good about it though. because he really was in the wrong when he got mad at me that one time, and he did apologize for that, which I can't even begin to describe how much that helped, because, that helped break the fear. It helped me realize, okay, this guy is not the same. He's a good man. If he kept, held on to his ego and was like, I had to be right and you're wrong, but he didn't. He let go of his ego, and then, I had nothing for my fear to hang on to then. My fear may have still kept telling me, you shouldn't trust him, but me being overcomer and somebody who likes facts was able to look at my fear in the face inside and say, if he was a bad man, then why did he swallow his pride and say, I'm sorry? He's not a bad man. He's a good man. And fear, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm going to listen to my heart and what I know is right. Um, so, I know more than anybody what it is like having to overcome fears and what it is like being hurt. And you can see in their eyes sometimes somebody did actually discriminate against them and was very racist against them. Um, and I don't believe them to truly be a racist then. I don't believe them to truly hate me because I'm white. I don't truly believe they hate anybody because they're white. I think they were hurt by somebody or somebody's that was white. And now, if you are white, you are a trigger. You're not doing it on purpose, and it's not your fault. It's just your trigger. Much like, men were a trigger to me to not trust at all. You being white is going to be a trigger to them to feel like they have to put up a wall. And so, in a sense, it's really not their fault, but it's not yours either. They've just been hurt, and they may not understand yet to try to rise above that hurt and understand that not every white person is racist. It's going to hurt at first, and there's probably going to be a lot of ranting, and there's probably going to be a lot of crying. But sometimes you just gotta face what you know in your heart. That's not to say that there's not racists out there in this world. There is. There is, or this kind of hurt would not occur. But not everyone's racist. So you kind of just have to overcome it and realize that there's more white people that'll be your friend than your enemy. And that all being said, as I said, there's also white people that have been discriminated against, and you know, people have been racist to them because they're white. Like like when I lived in that area, I didn't go outside. As I said, it didn't feel very safe. You know, and I think it's a really difficult subject to get into to describe it when there's racism against people who are white, because I know the history is that they, or at least what people know from history. Honestly, most people are not fully educated of what happened in history. They're just told about one little part where the blacks were slaves. Um, I'm not sure how else to put this other than there's some people that still hang on to that anger and that bitterness. Um, and they do not want to, I don't know why, but for some reason they do not want to recognize that we are in a new generation, we are in a new era, and we are no longer in those times. And yeah, pretty much if you have a white neighbor, it does not mean that they uh, want you as a slave. More than likely, they would probably like to invite you to a barbecue and like to be friendly neighbors with you. But some, they're still hanging on to that anger or that hurt. Um, and to be honest, I'm really confused as to why. And I think there's just some people out there, they're just hanging on to anger. And as for why, I mean, is there something that they didn't heal from in their past? I don't know. Or are they just an angry person that likes being angry? I don't know. But there's some out there that have been indeed very racist to those that are white. And they've hurt people that are white. Um, as I said, when I lived in that area and they were racist against me because I was white. They don't care about your background. They don't care about you. They only see your skin and that is it. It's a very hurtful and difficult place to be. So, I personally know what it feels like. Um, to have someone just that hateful and anger, and it's not because they were hurt. They're just an angry, hateful person, and I'm not trying to be mean because you can just see it in someone's eyes sometimes when they haven't been hurt and they're just an angry person, um, or they've been taught to say this, so they're in a sense brainwashed to say it. I in particular one time when I lived in that area, uh, I saw one of the most saddest things I'd ever seen in my life. There was actually little girls that were one was black and one was white, and they literally had no idea which of the two of them was black or white. Uh, I mean, they were both sitting there talking about how white people were ugly and covered in zits, and the sad thing was they were saying what the little girl's mom would say. So here's this little girl who's black with a best friend that's white, and she has no idea which one of them is black and white. And the sad part, she's already being raised to know one day by her mom and to hate her friend one day when she grows up. And it's the most heartbreaking thing. I would love to know that those little girls grow up, and I would love to know that, when the big reality hit that the mother was bad talking the little white girl, that they could, you know, overcome that and realize that they don't have to live that way. They don't have to live racist. They could just live and be the sister best friends that they were. And I would love to know that that's what happened, but I no longer live in that area to know. I just know it was heartbreaking. So you can get an idea of where those that are black, where racism begins. Somebody was angry, and somebody did not seek healing or find healing, and that anger has been passed down from one generation to the next, and that's what I believe. That's where I think where racism came from in certain black people. I do not think that that's the majority or so forth. I'm just saying that it does exist. And those that are that hateful and that angry over something that happened many, many, many years ago before any of us even were probably even thought about by the universe to exist. And yet that anger is still alive because someone couldn't find healing and because somebody the next generation wouldn't let it go. And then the next generation wouldn't let it go. And the next generation after that didn't let it go. So that anger has been alive because nobody wanted to let it go. And that anger has discriminated against and lashed out at people who are white. And it's very sad. because a lot of people who are white nowadays, not all our bloodline is white. Uh, I am particularly, I have Wyandotte in my blood. So, um, and, it's just sad that, that race can matter to some people so much. Um, so I guess back to what I was saying that, some that are black do discriminate against whites and they are racist and they are hurting them too. Uh, I think that's also sometimes where the conflict comes up where some people that are white, they may appear racist, but equally I don't think they're racist. I think like some blacks are triggered by somebody who is white because somebody who was white hurt them. I think that whites that have been actually had a racist encounter or experience, I think they too are affected to the point that now somebody who is black can trigger them. It's scary for them. They're afraid. Um, so, I think the majority of, you know, uh, blacks you see that you think are being racist, they're really not. They're just hurt and they need to learn to overcome that. And I know it's going to be really hard, but if they really want some peace in their life again, to realize that, they're surrounded by more friends than enemies, they're going to have to overcome it. But equally the same for people who are white that may appear racist. I think the majority of them are not really racist, they're just hurt. Um, and you can see a little bit more evidence of that, I would say, when you have the uh, Black Lives Matter group, and then you had the All Lives Matter group. Um, I think the Black Lives Matter group that arose because there was a lot of people who, well, and their message was clear. They do not want their lives discriminated against because they're black. They want the police force to treat them with dignity and respect. Even if they're a criminal, they want to be treated with dignity and respect and proper content of what you should do with a criminal. If you notice, some of them, would say hands up, don't shoot. So they weren't really saying don't arrest us. They were just saying if there's somebody who's being a criminal and they're black, don't immediately shoot. If they're cooperating, don't shoot. And, I can understand that message. Um, so there was somebody that was really hurt, but I think for some, it took off into an ugly direction, and for some, I think they had a well balanced mind, and they weren't just looking to find races. They were actually pointing out where racists were actually at. Um, I think good for them because when you're just looking for racist, you'll find it where it's not. um, so yeah, you honestly, I was taught growing up that you will find what you were looking for, and I absolutely agree with that. But when I was taught that you will find what you're looking for, it does not mean that um, that if you're looking for um, like in particular this one that they're looking for racism. I mean, you can be looking so hard that you'll start finding it in places where it doesn't exist. Um, and some of them, you could see that was the case. And some of them, you could also see that wasn't the case. They were genuinely just trying to point out racism where it was. And then some were looking so hard they started creating places where it didn't exist. Um, And that's no offense. I don't think that's because they were black that that happened. I think it's because they were human. I find it actually very common. I just find it quite common that they humans they will find stuff that are not there. So I'm not looking at this as it's because they were blacks that they were finding racism when it wasn't there. I think it's more as it's a human thing. And the mind, it's quite complex, and the psychology of it is very complex. But truth be told, just most humans in common, I've noticed they will see things that are not there. Um, just and their mind will exaggerate things. This is so it's not because they're black. I think it's just a normal, common human thing to do that. In fact, I think there's very few human beings that I've noticed that seem to have a very uh, logic bound mind that they will mostly only see the facts. Most humans, I do not believe, do. So yeah, but I really did enjoy when I could see those that were just pointing out racism where it was, because to me they're doing a good job, they're doing good work, and they they do a much better job, for argument's sake, to try to not let racist have any power. Um, and no offense to those that were seeing racism in places where it was not, but I think they make it very much more difficult for others that are actually pointing out racist. Because at this point, it's like the little boy that cried wolf. So many people hear it so many times, and then they see there's no racist there, and then they're like, they find it difficult to take all um, uh, that Black Lives Matter very seriously, um, because of the majority seeing it racism where it's not. But that doesn't mean that I don't think that there was. That doesn't mean that I think there was zero racism. No, you can tell that there was some, and you could tell some actually knew where it was, and they were pointing it out. And then there was a lot that were pointing out where there was none. Um, you know, but I would say that that movement had been brought up because of hurt, and because they wanted something to be done. And there's some that were in there, you could see they were doing a very good job, but some of them not so much. No offense. Uh, but that being said, there was a trigger by pain. Um, so people that were hurt by somebody who was racist and black clearly didn't take this movement very seriously, um, because they felt it meant their life doesn't matter. And, you can't blame them for feeling that way, because they've been affected and discriminated against at some point in their life. That to them, Black Lives Matter just meant your life don't matter. It was, the way I look at it is it was a trigger, is what it was. So it's not that they think that somebody who's black, that their life doesn't matter. Of course they think it matters. It's just that they've been hurt and affected, and they, as they felt like they had to stand up when there was somebody being racist against them, they felt they had to stand up for themselves, and in this moment now they felt the same. So now you have two groups that are very hurt folk, um, and have been affected by racism in some way, um, standing up against each other, and neither one of them is truly racist. They're each just very hurt and are now being triggered. And now you have two groups that are standing up against each other, arguing, fighting, and it has nothing to do with the other. it has to do with something that they have not found healing for yet. Um, so to be honest, I think that's why there's tension between those two groups. I don't think it's because either is racist. I think it's because each has been hurt. So yeah, honestly, I understand this is just my opinion and my belief, and it's okay if others disagree me. In fact, I quite expect others will disagree with me because, as I said, I know other people have been hurt. Um, so I imagine that there will be quite a few people, if they're black watching this, are gonna highly disagree with me that there's no way that somebody could be racist to a white, and there's no way that somebody could that's white could be hurt in that way. Um, and I think that's because you've been hurt. So just the fact that I'm white may trigger you, and I hope you find healing because I know being in a place like that in your mind where you're triggered by things, it's not a good place, and it takes your peace away. And good loving hearts, they don't deserve to have their peace taken away like that because some jerk hurt you. And I also know that there's probably going to be a lot of white people that also disagree with me to say that Black Lives Matter is not a bad movement. It's not a bad group. Um, and again, that's because, as I said, you've been hurt. Somebody who is more than likely black has hurt you. Um, and maybe it wasn't black. Maybe it was somebody who was of another race, and they treated you poorly because you were white. So any movement like Black Lives Matter arises, you immediately feel that hurt again, and you feel scared, and you feel like you have to defend yourself. So I understand you're probably going to disagree with me, and it's because I think you're hurt, and you have not found healing from that yet. So yeah, that's honestly what I believe about those two movements. I think that it's just two movements that were people that got hurt. Um, and I think in each movement you have very logical minds that actually are spotting racism where it is. And then you have a lot of other minds, more of them, uh, more of them than those that are logical, that are spotting racism where it's not. um, and that's just because that's what I believe about the human race. I think most of them see things that are not there. Um, and that's because they're looking for it, so they're going to see where it doesn't exist. Uh, kind of like the child who is convinced there's a monster in the dark when there's not. Um, I think we take that imagination with us to adulthood, except we no longer see monsters in the dark. We'll see other things that are not there. And we'll be very convinced they're there. Um, so yeah, that's just my personal opinion and beliefs about the movements. I don't think either is wrong. I think it was very good to stand up and say that, Black Lives Matter. That's okay. You're right. Your life does matter. It very much so matters, and it's good to say it does. But all the same, I don't have anything against those that stood up and said all lives matter because they're right. All lives do matter. And that's a very good thing to say it does. Um, so I have nothing against either group. I just find it really sad when they are each standing against each other rather than saying, you're right, all Black lives matter, and I'll stand with you on that because all lives matter, and you're a part of all lives. So, um, you know, you are a human being, so all lives matter. So yeah, that would mean that all Black lives matter too, because they are a life. So if all lives matter, then so do theirs. But all the same, I feel like that, it's sad when all Black lives matter was uh, angry and rising against those that were saying all lives matter. Um, because it's sad, all lives do matter. I wish that they could have just hugged them and said, "You're right, all lives do matter." I'm sorry, I didn't mean to give you the idea that saying Black Lives Matter meant your life doesn't matter. It does. It does matter. Of course it matters. I just wanted others to know that mine mattered too. Um, I wish I just could have seen more peace, between the two rather than, such aggression. Um, and I understand that what we saw was on the news. I mean, for all I know, there might have been more that were not aggressive, but we did not see that. But as for those that were aggressive, and we did see, it was really sad. It was really sad because both groups were very good, and I think they should have been acknowledged as good. Um, and I do hope that each that got aggressive, though, will find the healing that they need and deserve. Because, as I said, when some jerk comes around and they hurt you, they've taken your peace. And you don't deserve to, not have your peace. I'm sure you have a good heart and are a blessing to others. So I hope you find healing because nobody deserves to have their peace taken away from you. And I hope that they all come to terms and understand that you have more friends around you than enemies. And, you know, if you're standing up with Black Lives Matter, then you're showing the bad cops that, they're you have strength and you will not uh, turn a blind eye to where racism actually exists. And, if they had also equally stood up for those that um, were saying all lives matter, again, you would also have been saying that I will not turn a blind eye to where racism exists. I understand that you've been hurt too. And yeah, that's pretty much what I wish would I would have seen happen. But um, humans, they have a tendency to have a difficulty to heal and get lost in that pain to the point that their view of who's their friend and who's their enemy starts becoming very, very, very obscure. Um, for example, my mom, I'd said she was abused, and she very much so did not like my sister. And I say they were both prideful, but, to the point of, you know, I think the anger that she has towards my sister is not healthy. Uh, and the fact that she would be so angry that she lashed out at me after she left to take the place for all the pain she has and wanting to accuse somebody and be angry with somebody and lash out at somebody. Her pain, her hurt, makes her vision very obscure of who loves her unconditionally. And yeah, pretty much that's it. She just has an obscure view of who loves her unconditionally. Um, and has deep trust issues, so I think it's the same with those that have been hurt by racism in some form. Uh, they got hurt, and they got hurt bad, and their vision of those that are who's racist and who's not became very obscure. And at this point, it just became a trigger. For my mom's trigger, I would say it's just she's addicted to chaos. She grew up in chaos, so when there's too much calm, she's just triggered to lash out and make chaos where, there wasn't. And I think that's the same with those that have been hurt by racism. They're going to start seeing racism where it's not because there's a trigger. They've been hurt. There was an injustice, and now they have a trigger to feel like they have to fight when there's no need to fight. To feel like maybe they're gaining some sort of justice. Um, So not to say that racism doesn't exist. Of course it does, or these people would not be hurt. But I do think that it got them hurt to the point now we're seeing racism where it's not, and we have people that are absolutely not racist that are acting racist because they're hurt. Um, and then you know it just ends up hurting more people, and then more people and more people, and then you have more people and more people looking like racists when they're not. And it's just hurt. It is all hurt. And I understand these are my opinions I'm sharing, but either way, if someone's been hurt, I hope they find healing, because I think the more healing we have and the more acknowledging we have that somebody's hurt, and to try to seek some healing from that. And I mean, equally, the people that are hurt, reach out for healing, because if you're not reaching out for healing, there's only so much anybody can do to help you, and there's only so much anyone can do to take seriously what you're saying. So I mean, no offense, but if you're hurt too, you equally have to reach out and accept that healing. Um, and I hope that people are willing to reach out that hand and give that healing too, and try to, help others through that. Because I think the more healing we have, then the more we're willing to accept healing. The more this, I guess you could say, a problem we're having will start to demolish. I don't think that means it's going to get rid of the Black Lives Matter movement. As I said, that's a good movement, but I think getting the healing will help set things in motion a lot more, to actually, point out racism where it's at and stop pointing where it's not at. And I think equally, if, there's healing with people who are standing up for all lives matter to occur, there won't be so much um, tension against Black Lives Matter. And there will actually be peace and acknowledgement to care for all lives. Uh, you know, to point out racism where it really exists, as I said, and not point out where it's not existing. I think that more healing everybody can get, the more stable structure we're going to have, and hopefully peace in our environment to, and where we live, to understand we have more friends than we do enemies. Um, uh, yeah, and I hope all in all people find that healing, because no one deserves to have their peace taken away from them. I think that's all I can say on the matter. I hope I don't offend anyone, but I think the likelihood is that's not going to, happen. Someone's probably going to be offended by this. But I hope nobody is. I hope when, if they watch this, they realize I'm not saying blacks are racist or whites are racist. I'm actually saying the majority, I think, are just hurt people. Um, but, I understand the likelihood of someone not being offended by this is not likely. I can hope, but I realize it's not likely. But I do hope what I was saying, at least the majority or some people understand what I was saying, and understand I'm more for the support of peace and healing. And yeah, pretty much said just peace and healing, and reaching out for healing, and others giving out healing. And just making a movement of peace, and that would be great. I would like that. um, I guess I'm done now, so you have a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening, and very much peace to all.